Alright, so it seems that the summer movies are almost about to finish up here in the next few weeks, and I do realize I'm a week late on this particular one because G.I. Joe did open last Friday. However, I kind of wanted to wait until I actually saw the movie because there was a lot of negative press around the movie on how bad it was, and I did go see it, and I will say this. I thought it was really good. The problem is it's not entirely a great G.I. Joe movie. It's a great movie if you could put almost any other title on it. But the fact that it doesn't really invoke G.I. Joe, I think that's what the critics are making a big deal about. So if you have not seen it, don't be discouraged. It actually is a pretty good movie. So this week's tutorial, we're going to take a look at the G.I. Joe graphic, the actual logo and everything like that. Now, I did find some text, and I did find the font, and was able to put this together. In fact, I'll go ahead and make this available as a download, so you can go ahead and go along with this tutorial if you like. But obviously, I changed the name for obvious copyright reasons. And what we're going to do is just create some effect on this, and I am going to take a little bit of license and take it further than the actual movie did, or any of the graphics did, and add my own little elements to it. In fact, we're going to add a little bit of 3D to it. So, let us begin by selecting the text layer, and I'm going to go ahead and lock the transparency on this, and I'm going to go over here in my toolbox, or toolbar rather, and grab the gradient tool, and we're going to go in here in the options and use this first gradient, which is the foreground to background gradient. And I want to use the radial gradient here in the options bar and want to make sure that white is set as my foreground color. Inside the document, I'm going to start up here outside the area of the text and just drag out the gradient. And with that transparency lock, you'll notice that it only affects the letters on the layer. Well, now what I want to do is add a layer style. So we're going to go in here into the layer style menu, and we're going to add a bevel and emboss. And you can see it applies it on there. I'm going to make this a size of 3, and we're going to take the depth and push it all the way to 1000. There's a really hard edge there. Next thing is, I think that all looks good. Let's go ahead and click OK on that. And the next thing is we're going to duplicate this layer. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Oh, let's go ahead and duplicate that layer. I'm going to drag it down to the duplicate, or the new layer icon. It creates a duplicate of that. What I want to do is change the layer style, because what I want to do is add kind of an underglow to this lettering, and I want to use the bevel and emboss to do that. However, I'm already using the bevel and emboss to define my shape. So by creating a duplicate layer and then taking the fill setting here and dragging it to 0, it's going to allow me to apply a different type of bevel and embossing on this and change the color, and it will still maintain the one beneath it. So we drop the fill down to 0. Let's double click on this and open up the layer style panel. And inside here, I'm going to take the shadow mode and drop it all the way to 0. And in the highlight mode, we're going to take this and click on the color swatch, and let's change this to kind of a light blue color. And I'm going to set the blend mode of this to normal. And you can see it's giving me a little bit of a light glow. I actually want it coming from underneath, so let's take the angle target here and push it down to the bottom. So now it really looks like it's illuminating that from the bottom there. It's kind of cool. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Actually, I want to jump back in there. Let's go back into that layer style. I'm just going to double click that effects icon. I did want to make this a tad smaller. We made that original bevel size 3. Let's take this little blue highlight and make it a size 2. Because what that does is it brings out that edge a little bit more of that beveling, giving us a nice sharp edge there. Very cool. Now what I want to do is add a 3D element. So the text is pretty much done. As you can see, it's really just text with a little bit of beveling on it. We added that extra bevel layer just so we can get that blue highlight under there. But now we're going to add a few more elements to this. Select that bottom background layer here and create a new blank layer above it. And what we're going to do is go into our shape tools in our toolbar here and grab the custom shape tool and go up here into the shape menu, and you've got this menu of all different types of shapes in here. And if you don't see all of them, you can just go over here and choose all to reveal all the shapes. But the one we're looking for is this one right here. Looks like a little globe there. So select that shape, go into your document, and I'm going to draw this out as pixels. As you can see, I've got the third icon selected here, which is for the fill pixels. And I'm going to go into my document, zoom out here a little bit, and drag out that shape. I'm holding down my shift key as I drag out so it constrains the proportions. And there you see it fills it in. Now what I want to do is fill this with gray. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the transparency. I'm going to press Shift Delete, would be Shift Backspace on Windows, and use 50% gray. Click OK. Now I want to turn this into a 3D layer, but before I do that, I do want to make sure that this is in the dead center of my image. So I'm going to press Command A and then do a vertical and horizontal centering there, alignment rather. So now it's in the middle. Next thing is, I think I want to expand the lines out on this. I wasn't going to do this, but let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to load this as a selection. I'm just going to Command or Control click right on the layer, go into the Select menu and go to Modify and choose Expand. And we're going to expand it by, let's try 5 pixels. I think that looks good. Now, unlock that transparency so we can fill that area in, and then do what we did a moment ago. Press Shift Delete, 50% gray. There we have it. Now let's go into our 3D menu and choose New 3D Postcard from Layer. So we'll turn that into a 3D layer, which allows us to use our 3D rotation tools and just give us a turn, just like that. And what I want to do is go ahead and add a layer style to this 3D layer. So let's go and double click that. Add a bevel and emboss. We'll make it very small. In fact, I'm only going to do a 1 pixel size here. And for the depth, again, we're going to push it all the way to 1000. And then we'll click OK. So now I can use my 3D rotation tool, move this around. Doesn't look like much yet, but we're going to add a couple more things to it. First thing is, let's open up our 3D panel and go over here into the third icon over, which is the materials section. And over here in the environment area, down here towards the bottom for the surface properties, we're going to add an environment. So I'm going to go into that little icon and choose load texture. And I've got a number of images here, and I'm just going to look for any random one. In fact, I like that one right here. It's just some metal parts. It's kind of got a metallic nature to it. So I'll click open. And I notice nothing happened because even though I've added an environment, it's not going to do anything as long as my reflectivity setting here is at 0. So we're going to take that and bump it up to 50. And now when I click and drag and rotate this, there that object, the metallic image is now reflecting inside there. It's almost like it's in the background, and this is like a mirrored or a metallic object that's reflecting it. Kind of cool. Well, now let's throw a layer mask on this layer and mask around the edges, or rather the top and bottom. So let's go grab our gradient tool. Let's grab the foreground to transparent, which is the second icon over. Using a linear gradient, let's come in from the top and come in from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and come in from the sides as well because we're going to make this graphic a little bit bigger. Now, what I want to make sure of is that because I've got a layer mask on this and I have a layer style, I'm going to double click on that effects icon and open up the layer style panel. And what I want to make sure of is in my blending options here, I want to make sure that under advanced blending, we've got this item right here checked on, which is layer mask hides effects. So click that on and you'll notice how the appearance changed because it's really applying that beveling along that gradient, which I don't want it to do. So you want to make sure that the layer mask is hiding everything. So go ahead and click OK. Grab that 3D rotation tool, and now I'm going to really bump up the size of this graphic. And I'm also going to change the blend mode of this overall layer from normal to overlay. And now when I rotate this, it gives me kind of a cool little kind of a 3D background effect. That's pretty cool. So it gives you that little extra element there. Well, now let's jump back to our original text and add a couple more things to that. So I'm going to go back into that layer style for the text layer, and let's add a drop shadow. I'm going to go in here and just move this back manually. If you just click inside your document, you can drag it back a little bit. Let's bump the size up so it gives a little bit more depth off that background. But I'm also going to throw an outer glow on this. And let's set the outer glow to white and really bump up the size. And then change the blend mode of this outer glow from screen to overlay. So you can see the difference there. It's giving me a nice glow around the text. Now, let's take that 3D object and rotate it a little bit more around. Let's even bump up the size a little bit. But you can see it's giving me a cool dimension back there with that reflected element in it as well. Let's throw one more thing on here. I'm going to actually go to that very bottom layer in the layers panel and create a new layer above it. And I'm going to go and sample this green color that we're using for the background. And we're going to use that gradient tool. Again, using the foreground to transparent, I'm going to draw a linear gradient from the top and from the bottom here. I'm going to hold down my shift key, drag it in from the top, drag it in from the bottom. And you'll see on the layer that's what we've got, a little gradient coming in from the top and bottom. And then simply change the blend mode of this layer from normal to multiply. And it gives us that much more dimension to it and that much more depth. And we can always go in there and modify that 3D object to get a very interesting effect. So there it is, taking the text a little bit further and adding some few more 3D elements to it to make it a little bit more interesting. But hope you enjoy that. If you haven't had a chance to see the movie, go check it out. It's not nearly as bad as you may think. See you guys next time.